have a look at my phone, Matt. See this app?
Oh, what does it do?
It turns on the heat in my house when I'm on my way home. So when I get there, it'll be warm already.
Oh, look, I've got one here on my phone that plays soothing music in my apartment when I'm not there, so that my daughter's guinea pig won't feel lonely.
Wow, I should get that one. And the Kennedy. Look at this. Look at this one. It's an app that
puts bread in your toaster.
Yes, and makes an espresso just as if you're waking up to.
Because it's remotely linked to your biorhythms and sleep patterns. I love that app. I've got it too.
These apps are amazing.
Yes, and they're really stupid.
Extremely stupid.
Imagine what would happen if you took these little apps and expanded them to the size of an entire city.
Well, what would be the point of that?
Well, you could impress people with all the gadgets around your city, you know, lights that come on only when you ride past them on a unicycle, things like that.
Is that what people mean when they talk about smart cities?
It is what a lot of people think smart cities are, but our experts on smart cities here at the European Investment Bank believe they're missing the point.
Which is?
All these technological developments have to be part of a big plan that works across an entire city. That's the best way to make it work for every citizen in that city.
All right, well, what does this have to do with finance? Why are we talking about this on a dictionary of finance?
These things aren't free. Towns and cities have to work out how to pay for them. They also have to ensure that the money is really going to benefit their citizens.
So today's show is on smart city finance?
It is. Now, show me that iTunes app. How do people use that to subscribe to our podcast?
Oh, yeah, it's here. Look, you go to the iTunes store and you search for a dictionary of finance. Then you press enter and you...
This is a dictionary of finance from the European Investment Bank, and this is our episode on smart city finance. So we've got three experts here on smart cities and smart city finance from the European Investment Bank. We're going to introduce them to you now. We have Manuel Duenas. He's head of the EIB's division that works on public sector lending to the Czech Republic, Hungary and Slovakia. And we always like to share something interesting about our guests. Here we've got, let's say, a recommendation for some literary reading for you, because Manuel's sister, Maria Duenas, is a novelist. What's the novel about, or her biggest novel?
Well, she's got already 3 novels out. I think the biggest was Tiempo entre costuras, which actually was a very, very large bestseller in Spain and around the world.
And that's translated, at least into English, as The Seamstress.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So it's been translated, in fact, in many languages. Huh?
And it talks about your family. So if you want to know more about Manuel's family, then you should go and buy the book.
Well, it tells you that your family was originally living in the Spanish part of Morocco.
The Spanish part of Morocco, yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay. Emily Smith is Financial Instruments Advisor in the EIB's advisory services and has read The Seamstress.
That's correct.
Aha, fantastic. That's why we've had you on. So we're actually going to have a book group now rather than talk about smart cities. But Emily has also worked on urban regeneration in the northeast of England. Northwest, that's right. I just get my left and right mixed up when I think of the map.
Dangerous mistake.
Right. So which cities were you focused on there?
Primarily in Liverpool, but then more latterly in Liverpool and Manchester.
Aha, okay. Well, Liverpool is actually rather lovely. I was about to say lovely now. I mean, in some ways it was always lovely, wasn't it? But there you go. And Gerry Muscat heads urban development in the EIB's Environment and Sustainable Territorial Development Department. We call him Mr. City here. He's so urbane. He's sitting here, he's looking very, very urbane. So we talked about Manuel's family coming from Morocco. Gerry's family actually has its origins also in an Arab country.
Indeed, yeah. My father actually was born in Tunis, but I think because of my name, Muscat, which is the capital of Oman, maybe my genes come from further east as well.
Aha, absolutely. But more recently, they're also in Malta.
That's right. Yes. So I have lots and lots of relatives in Malta. Indeed.
Ah, okay. But also relatives in Poland, because you're a Polish speaker who's married to a Pole.
Yes, my wife is Polish, and she's taught me Polish over a long and painful process. So I'm now actually pretty well fluent in Polish.
Really? How do you say Environment and Sustainable Territorial Development Department in Polish? Sounds a little bit like it anyway, doesn't it? Well, before we start talking about smart cities, there's one thing that we wanted to clear up, because we've actually had a bit of a debate about how you say in a dictionary of finance, is it a dictionary of finance or a dictionary of finance? So, Ala, we've been going over this, haven't we, a little bit with some colleagues and some people from different places.
I just have to say that before I met you, I've never heard anyone say finance.
Ah, okay. All right.
So it's you that's gotten me all confused.
No, it's actually the BBC that confused me because, Gerry, do you remember quite a long time ago there was a newsreader on BBC TV called Angela Rippon?
Oh, yes.
Yes, that's right. She was famous for introducing all kinds of different ways of saying things, but I suppose she was quite posh and she said finance, amongst other things. So I think I caught it from her. But there are certain parts of Britain, Emily, do you say finance or finance?
Finance.
Ah, okay. So Americans and most British people say finance. Some say finance, but the verb is supposed to be finance. So the European Investment Bank finances smart cities, even if half the time people say actually we finance smart cities. So there you go. There's that little bit of lessons over, and now we can get on to smart cities. So let's start with Gerry. It's a bit of a buzzword, or is it a real thing? What is a smart city? Before we talk about the finance, what is a smart city?
Well, you're right. It is a buzzword. To me, what's key about a smart city is it's one of these city visions that we have. So we talk about social city or inclusive city, which emphasizes social integration. We talk about green cities, which emphasizes the environmental dimension. What really I would say is a smart city, it's all to do with a city being able to use technology to improve services for citizens and deliver a better environment for people to live in.
But is it a third category of cities? So you have social cities, you have the environmental cities, and then you have the smart or the technological cities.
Well, actually, I think the way we see it is the overarching term would be sustainable cities, and then smart, inclusive and green are all dimensions of reaching real sustainability. So I think that's how we would see it. They're not really different kinds of cities, and all cities have certain elements of all three visions.
So when we say smart, we mean it in the American sense, not the British sense, because Gerry is sitting here in a nice jacket and a tie. So if we're British, we're saying he looks very smart, but Gerry is actually smart in the American sense because he's very intelligent. So are these the same cities that people sometimes call intelligent cities or wired cities?
Well, actually, I think that the term wired cities really does refer to having the connectivity and the technology there. What we really think of as smart cities is going beyond this wired city or intelligent city concept and actually thinking about the planning and thinking about consulting the people who live in the cities. And that's what really makes a city smart. It's not just about the technology.
But indeed, I would say that, not being an English native speaker, I think probably the term intelligent is more telling than smart. Smart kind of is a buzzword, while intelligent has its mean by itself. So really, I would prefer that this to be called intelligent rather than smart.
But is the reason that we're dealing with smart? Let's stick to smart for now, just because it's a shorter word. But is the reason why we're dealing with this is it because we're a public policy-driven bank and we're looking at smart cities as a public good, or are we concerned with smart cities because from a financing perspective, doing smart things is the sustainable and financially sensible thing to do? Is it a financial goal for us, or is this something that we look at as good for the living environment of the people?
Well, in a way that we are really engaged with sustainable cities, we cannot avoid to deal with smart cities because it's a part of it. So, and somehow, as well as a bank, we still have to have stories to tell to people, right? And make our finance to this type of projects interesting for them. So actually, we should really focus on this component of sustainable cities as well and tell the people, the citizens of the European Union, that we are really engaged with this type of projects.
But I think if I can just add, I think actually smart is broader than just the technology or indeed the investments. And actually, we could really talk about smart finance because actually what the bank is trying to do is finance these kind of investments in innovative and smart ways. So it's all part of this smart dimension.
So let's get to the finance. Oh, now I'm so confused.
Finance.
Thanks. What an educational podcast this is. But Emily, we've mentioned sustainability a couple of times there. Sustainable urban development is basic to a smart city, but what does sustainable actually mean?
I think the technical definition is economic development, which doesn't involve the depletion of natural resources, but on a practical level, it can mean many things. So for me, it's about the regeneration of brownfield sites. It's about refurbishing historical dilapidated buildings rather than building new ones. It's about retrofitting buildings which are inefficient in terms of their fuel consumption.
As this is a dictionary of finance and a dictionary, let's also clear up some terms. What is brownfield?
So a brownfield site is a site which has been used previously for other purposes. So think of a contaminated, polluted site that's had a former industrial life versus a greenfield site, which is a beautiful agricultural field or public landscape.
Okay. So, Gerry, we've all met people who thought they were smart, but really they weren't all that smart. Is it the same for cities? In other words, how do we make sure that a smart city investment is really smart?
Well, I think the key is really to look beyond just the technology. I think a smart city has to apply technology to improve services, but it goes beyond that. And a truly smart city is a city which uses the technology but does it in a way which is well planned, so they're thinking about how the technology can be used across the different delivery platforms of the city, and also a city which consults with its people and makes sure the citizens have a say in how the technology is used and what kind of solutions, smart city solutions, can benefit them the most. And some cities actually even are having a part of their city budget voted on and determined by the citizens who can actually come up with innovative solutions themselves.
Mm-hmm. So, Manuel, I want to pick up on something that Gerry mentioned a little earlier, but I want to read first something that one researcher wrote about smart cities, and this is a quote: "A city can be defined as smart when investments in human and social capital and traditional transport and modern communication infrastructure fuel sustainable economic development and a high quality of life with a wise management of natural resources through participatory action and engagement." So I suppose there a key word is investment in all that. There's a lot going on, but at the heart of that there's investment. Does a smart city need a different kind of investment from a city that's not trying to do a smart project?
I wouldn't say so. I think a smart city, as Gerry just mentioned, is a city that actually looks into what are the most important projects for the people who lives there and utilize all the resources which are available to them in a smart or intelligent way, including, of course, technology. And therefore, in that way, it would not be a different type of investment. It's simply that the investment that they decide to realize are really well thought through, well planned in advance, and they make sure that actually they are using all the available technology to them to implement it and to make it more integrated into the city fabric.
But from listening to you, it sounds to me that smart cities have a bit of a higher chance in getting that financing, because if they've really thought this through, what they plan to do and what they aim to do will most likely also generate revenue for the city and make it economically more viable.
Finance is about to transform money of the future in money at present. So actually when we give a loan to whatever counterpart we have, actually we try to evaluate whether or not that counterpart is able to generate revenues in the future in order to repay the loan. So if a city invests in a smart way or an intelligent way, of course it will be able to generate jobs, to have more companies working on developing their business in the city, and therefore the city itself will have more revenues through taxes. So for us, as a bank, and I would say for any bank, smart cities are better kind of counterparts than non-smart cities.
I want to get into a couple of examples that I think that'll make it very concrete for some of our listeners. But first, let's have a little rundown of what kinds of finance you can have for a smart city. Gerry, the European Investment Bank has a certain number of financial tools. What are the ones that are particularly useful for smart city investments?
Well, I think first of all, if you have a major project, which is, let's say, a big urban regeneration scheme, or it's a big public transport scheme, or a water and wastewater scheme, which is smart in its nature, then we can use what we call an investment loan, which is a project-specific loan to finance that particular project. And then we also have for a program of investments what we call a framework loan, where we can actually finance, let's say, a slice of a city's investment program and finance, therefore, quite a number of different investments together through a single loan to the city. And if we identify a number of these schemes which are smart in nature, we could call this a smart city investment program, and a framework loan is a very good tool to finance that.
Can you think of an example of one that we're either doing now or have done recently, a framework loan to a smart city?
Yes, we've recently done a framework loan to the city of Krakow in Poland, which actually has a lot of smart investments inside it, particularly in the area of public transport. They have an integrated public transport platform. They're experimenting with carpooling. They have smart cards for payment systems. They have intelligent transport systems, and they really are moving forward with a very integrated planning approach to their urban transport solutions. So there was quite a lot of investment within that framework that was in the area of public transport, but also other sectors like energy efficiency and health and other sectors as well.
Emily, you're a financial instruments advisor. Let's have some advice on financial instruments for smart cities. What is a financial instrument, and how would you use it, or how are we using it for smart city investments?
So financial instruments involve the use or the transformation of grant funding into a repayable form of investment. So public resources that would otherwise be invested once by way of grant are transformed into repayable loans or equity investments or guarantee structures, which hopefully mobilise additional private sector money to both increase the pool of investment which is available to achieve a certain policy objective, but also because the investment means are repayable, it means that the money is invested on a more sustainable and revolving and evergreen way.
Mm-hmm. Is there an example you can give us of a city that's done that?
We have a number of examples. So in the UK, we have an urban regeneration-based financial instrument called Evergreen, which invests in the urban development of the northwest of England, Manchester particularly. We're working on financial instruments in other countries. We have proposals in Slovakia, in Slovenia, in Spain, France,
Portugal,
Greece
as well. Yes, absolutely.
But
multiple countries.
Evergreen specifically, what does it do? It takes grant financing from the EU to the cities, or it takes the money that the cities have and uses that financing? How does it work?
It initially takes the grant money from the EU. It combines that with national co-financing, so money from domestic government resources, and then it tries to structure its finance in such a way that it mobilises additional private sector capital. So often you may start with, say, 20 million of structural funds money, and through the financial instrument mechanism you're able to mobilise 100 to 200 million of investment. So you get more bang for your buck in terms of the amount of money which you're able to mobilise for your objective, but also because it's invested on a sustainable way, that money comes back all being well, and you have money for future generations.
So Manuel, what's the economic rationale? We've got into this a little bit already. What's the economic rationale for investing in a smart city?
Actually, a city which is investing in a smart way, it clearly becomes a better city for us. It will become a better city in the future, and therefore it will be a counterpart for any financier, which actually would be able to be appraised or considered as a better borrower than others.
Well, you mentioned the future a few times there. Is every city going to have to become a smart city?
I think it would be needed. I mean, the cities which actually will not be smart actually will be lagging behind, and the population will move out, and therefore it will be a self kind of distorting cycle on which, by not investing in a smart way, actually they will not be able to attract people, attract businesses, and therefore the resource of revenues will be reduced.
So they would have to have some kind of long-term smart strategy, Gerry.
Well, I think they do. I think that some cities like Milan have a kind of dedicated smart city strategy, which has a name of a smart city strategy on the cover, if you like. Other cities actually embed the smart thinking within their overall city strategy, and so they ensure that their overall city strategy can enable smart city investments to benefit the city and to realize the goals of the city. I think for the EIB, both approaches are actually fine. What we do like to see is that one way or another, cities are actually planning and setting up an enabling framework that can enable these kinds of smart city investments to go ahead.
But beyond providing smart financing for these smart cities, do you also help them make their plans smarter? If a city comes to us and they've developed a plan to invest in something, and you guys look at it and say that we don't think that's too smart, are we able to help them make that investment strategy, that strategy for the city, more intelligent?
Well, as you may be aware, the EIB has a big advisory services role, and so where a city might ask for support in refining its strategy to ensure it can take advantage of smart solutions, it is an area that we could potentially provide support in, for sure.
How do they do that? Emily, you work in the advisory section here. Who do they come to? If you're the mayor of a city in Slovakia and you think I should have a smart city strategy, who do you get in touch with?
So we have a facility called the European Investment Advisory Hub, which is a dedicated advisory umbrella within the bank, and is part of actually the investment plan for Europe, for those of the listeners who know about the investment plan for Europe. And the advisory hub basically has a website. It's open for anybody to have a look at the website, to have a look at some case studies and understand the different types of advice it can provide. And if cities, public stakeholders are interested in seeking some advice, they can fill in a contact us form, and we will get in touch with them to discuss their requirements further. But it's a really useful tool, and it's able to provide advice to really support a range of investment proposals, so investment projects, investment programs, and also investment platforms, which is a new policy tool which basically involves the investment of, sorry, I'm going to kill you with jargons, EFSI, so okay. European Fund for Strategic Investments, with other public forms of investment.
Which is part of the investment plan for Europe
it
that
is,
you mentioned there. Yeah, we've kind of touched upon that in the past. We've never really got down to it. We'll have to have an episode just on that. So you can come through the investment...
the advisory hub.
European Investment Advisory Hub. Or actually you could go with a local bank, because there are some banks around Europe that have kind of a specialized program for smart cities.
Yes, indeed. And actually in Belgium we've been working with the bank Belfius, which is the main financier for urban investments in Belgium, and actually we've developed a smart city financing facility with them, and that's actually been quite successful. We're now we're actually working on the third program on smart cities with them, and they've integrated also circular city solutions and climate-oriented financing as well. And that actually is very useful, because via these kinds of banks, we can, through their networks, we can actually finance investments in very small towns, even down to a few thousand inhabitants. And for us, it's actually quite important that smart cities, not just about big cities. Any town or a settlement can actually take advantage of smart solutions. They may not be the same as what you can do in a big city, but they may still be smart and can benefit from this kind of financing.
So we think that small cities might have a future as well, after all.
Oh, absolutely. I think actually if you look at urban growth over recent years, in fact, the growth is actually happening in the medium-sized cities and not in the megacities. And so I think that actually small and medium-sized cities have a major role to play in the future, and actually ensuring that they can benefit from smart tools as well is very important.
So the takeaway is that Belgium is the smartest country in Europe, huh? Oh no, you mentioned Krakow too. Sorry, okay, it's the Polish as well. Okay. Well, if you're smart, you will work with Gerry, Manuel, and Emily to make your city smart. You can read more about EIB Smart Cities by going to eib.org/smart city project and read various things that these guys have done in the past, projects that they've worked on, and also how to get involved with these things yourself if you're the mayor or someone who works at a city that wants to be smart. You can contact Alar and me on Twitter with the best smart city projects in your town. This is also all about social engagement, isn't it? Go to @EIBMatt, EIBMatt, and tell us about, I don't know, how the lights switch on your bicycle path when you ride past them, things like that. But actually, if there's really a smart city program, we'd love to hear about it, and we'll mention it on one of our podcasts, won't we?
Yes, and also do suggest further terms and concepts that you would like to hear discussed on our show, on the Dictionary of Finance. And also do tune in next week for the next episode of Dictionary of Finance by the European Investment Bank.